And a happy Tuesday to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. Not too much going on as we head into the beginning of the midweek, but we are going to have some subtle changes to your forecast starting as soon as tomorrow. And those subtle changes are going to take us into a bit of a noteworthy forecast, I guess, as you can go into the weekend, not only in the form of some warmer temperatures, but also in the form of some rain chances that are beginning to increase. Then as we go into the end of the weekend, we are eyeing potential signs of a cool down, a bit of a reality check, because obviously it's been a very warm stretch of weather as of recently. Quite the opposite of what our groundhog friends said, but we'll go over everything that you need to know here in full detail. So your main headlines: the high temperatures continue to climb. Today going to be a little bit warmer than yesterday. Tomorrow might be a little bit warmer than today, but overall most days are going to feel pretty similar out and about during the afternoons. Increasing rain chances, like we mentioned, as we go into the weekend. We are seeing signs of our next weather maker trying to organize, but there is still little to no agreement amongst the timing and the location of those rain chances. So we'll talk about what we're seeing according to the GFS and the Euro, and then a cool down into next week. Obviously, all good things must come to an end. It has been a very nice and a very well-deserved stretch of some spring-like temperatures, a little bit earlier than we should see, but obviously we are still in the season of winter. We'll talk about how close we are to officially creeping into that spring-like forecast. But first things first, we'll take a walk around the quad, and all these images look a whole lot better than what they did this morning, specifically the Georgia National Fairgrounds in Dublin, where we had widespread fog in the picture. Wasn't necessarily as dense as it could be, but we had some occasional time moments throughout the morning where we were seeing some dense fog, really limited visibility, just a whole cluster of gray on your screens. But now we see plenty of blue, and that is coming in the form of blue sky, and also maybe some higher level clouds out and about, maybe up to the north of Macon, maybe a few that we can spot up here in the top left of your screen in Dublin, but really more so over to the west as we look from the west gate at the Georgia National Fairgrounds and down here off Cohen Walker Drive. It is a very clear forecast, but there are some clouds out and about around us, and it still looks like that's mainly of higher level cloud cover variety. Well, boy, oh boy, is the eastern United States seen quite a flip in terms of the temperatures over the last couple of weeks. We're talking about a mixture of 50s and 60s. Even a few 70s popping up. 75 in Orlando, 72 down in Laredo. 75 is definitely going to take the cake for the warmest number that we do see. And up to the northeast of us, Virginia Beach and Washington still sitting around that 40-degree mark. 56 in Charlotte, sitting at 61 degrees, just like us here in Macon, is going to be Charleston. A little bit warmer over into Montgomery, and then we start to see some 50s in areas like Jackson, Little Rock, up into Oklahoma City, Wichita, and Kansas City, which are flirting with the 60-degree mark. Pretty similar temperatures over there in the southern and the central plains compared to what we see down here in the southeast. Those areas have been a good deal colder as of recent months, especially when we got those winter weather chances. We were talking about some values that were down in the single digits, even some numbers that got down into the negatives on occasion. So a look at your current temperatures down here in the southeast corner of the United States. Like I said, a mixture of 50s and 60s for the most part, in the upper half of the 50s and the lower half of the 60s. We start to see some 66s down there in Valdosta and Jacksonville for the warmest numbers. Down here across Georgia, Alabama, getting into Florida, South Carolina, and Mississippi. Here in central Georgia, upper 50s, low 60s are the name of the game. 64 at the warmest down in Vidalia, 60 in Gordon, 61 in Macon and Warner Robins, and it is slightly cooler up to the north. Maybe just because it's kind of that time of year. Typically we'll see a little bit of a difference temperature-wise in north central Georgia compared to down into the south, but also it's kind of dependent on areas that did hold on to maybe the foggy skies for a little bit longer, blocked a little bit of that sunshine. Nonetheless, your temperature range is probably about 4 to maybe 6 degrees here as we approach the midday hour. Here's a look at your winds and your wind gusts, and once again it remains a tad bit breezy outside just like yesterday, but maybe not quite as gusty. At the most we see a breeze around 10 miles per hour down in Warner Robins, but it looks like your sustained winds, that's going to be the number that is smaller and over to the left in white. 5 to 10 mile per hour breeze. Looks like those breezier conditions are present farther down to the southwest as opposed to up in northern central Georgia. Don't see as many shades of blue up there. That's where we find them down to the south and the southwest right now. So your satellite and radar picture. Here in central Georgia, we just see some thin high level cloud cover down in our southernmost counties, and that is going to be indicated by the fact that you do see maybe a bit more of a kind of smoky gray color. So obviously, when you start to get a lighter gray shade, that's going to indicate some denser cloud cover like you do see up here in the top left of your screen. But down here in central Georgia, this is some very thin cloud cover, and that is also going to correlate to cloud cover a little bit higher up in the sky. But over to the west, it is a pretty gloomy atmosphere, and that makes sense because we saw some temperatures scattered about the 50s back over into Mississippi and getting into some portions of Alabama, but obviously Montgomery had a 65 compared to our 61. I imagine some cloud cover will be on and off in those states over the course of today, and that is going to kind of foreshadow and be a bit of a precursor for what is in store for our forecast as we go throughout the next couple of days. So there's a look at your satellite and radar across the state of Georgia. Overall, it's a pretty quiet forecast, and it will remain that way throughout the rest of today. So finally, I had an issue all morning where I kept popping up today's almanac instead of yesterday's, but I did pop up yesterday's on the stream. So 70 degrees for your high temperature yesterday, 6 degrees above average for this time of year, and exactly what we were saying. Temperature was going to be a little bit above what a lot of our graphics did say. 43 for a morning low. That was a couple degrees above average. In fact, we saw some numbers that got below average as of this morning, where I think actually our average low went up to 40 degrees, but we started out somewhere, say, in the mid 30s, I do believe, up here in Macon. So above average in both temperature departments yesterday, not quite close to the record of 85 and nowhere near that record low of 16 degrees back in 1905. But no rain recorded, so your departure yesterday, I think it was at minus 2.97 inches, so we're right there around 3 inches below where we should be, but now we are over 3 inches below where we should be for 2026. Sunrise yesterday, 7:17. Sunset was at 6:21. We're getting pretty close to a 6:30 p.m. sunset, which I do believe is actually going to happen on the second to last day of the month on February 27th. So that can be something that you get excited for and keep an eye out on, but we'll also have more to talk about with the change in the sunrise and sunset times as we go into the tail end of the month and specifically into the beginning of March. So here's a look at your high temperatures for the month of February. We had our fair share of some below average days and some chilly days in the forecast to kick off the month. But ever since last Monday, it has been a streak of 8 days in a row with an above average high temperature. And I imagine that today, tomorrow, going into Thursday, Friday, all the way to Saturday, maybe into Sunday, we could have another stretch of about 7 more days that are looking to be above average before finally we actually see one of those blue boxes pop back up on the calendar graphic. But already, after the cold start to February, you definitely didn't think that the tally of above average days would be double what the below average days sit at. And of course, that one outlier going to be last Sunday, the 8th of February, where we did see an exactly on par high temperature of 62 degrees. So it was a chillier morning today as compared to yesterday, something that I kept reiterating all morning long. Grab those layers as you walk out the door. The only time that you're going to need it today is for the morning commute. Well, your temperature is right now hovering around 60 degrees. It's already feeling pretty pleasant, and those numbers will only continue to get warmer. Another great afternoon, mostly sunny skies, high temperatures that are not only above average, but also once again above the 70-degree mark, pairing that up with a bit of a south and southeasterly breeze, 5 to 10 miles per hour for the most part. That's what we just saw on the winds and the wind gust graphic. But the main thing that I want to issue about today is tell you to really just make some sort of outdoor plans, whether it's going outside, taking a stroll with the baby, walking your dog. Maybe it's just getting outside and really just sitting out there and enjoying a little bit of sunshine, because the warm temperatures, they are here to stay. We will have those for the rest of the work week. But the difference between today and Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday is we are going to have mostly sunny skies. We are going to still see warmer temperatures, but they're going to be paired up with more so a cloudier atmosphere over the next couple of days. I'm not saying it's going to be completely gloomy and completely overcast. We will still see some peaks of sunshine, but it's not going to be all throughout the afternoon like what we will see today, and plenty of that blue color in the sky. So that's what we have to talk about as we go throughout the rest of today, and that's what's leading to such a quick warm up. Obviously, those mostly clear skies after we had some fog in the picture early this morning. Our graphic peaking at 71 degrees this afternoon, so it's a little bit closer to my forecasted high than, say, what we did see as of yesterday, which makes me kind of confident that we might see a 73 or a 74 in terms of your high temperature later on this afternoon. Only time will tell, but still, low 70s compared to mid 70s. That's really feeling virtually the same, and that is a very spring-like forecast. And then, of course, that cool down does begin as we head into the 6 p.m. hour when the sun does begin to set. 66 degrees. The evening should still feel mighty nice. We're not looking at the temperatures to dip down as much tonight as compared to what we did see last night, because we did have a pretty clear overnight, but now we are going to reintroduce some cloud cover back into the forecast. And along with that, note the direction of your winds. They're not very gusty whatsoever. However, they are coming from the southerly direction. So we are going to usher in a steady improvement in the moisture content, and that is going to make a good bit of difference as we walk out the door tomorrow morning, because overnight, really more so the early morning hours into tomorrow, that's when we start to see more widespread cloud cover. That's when that cloud cover gets a bit denser in nature. I'm not saying completely cloudy all the way from sun up into sundown for your Wednesday. Like I mentioned, there are gaps in this cloud cover to where we do get some peaks of some sunshine, maybe that first sunrise in the morning. But any areas that have the passing cloud cover throughout Wednesday, you are going to have the chance of maybe seeing a very light and a very, very isolated sprinkle shower. So what I mean by that is maybe you only notice a couple water droplets that hit your windshield as you're making your way out and about tomorrow afternoon, but it's not going to accumulate to anything whatsoever. In fact, I don't even know if these sprinkle showers would be enough to accumulate to even a trace of some rainfall. It is just going to be one of those 10% cover the bases day, more likely than not that you just remain dry. But some areas that have some passing cloud cover, you do have the potential for maybe catching one of those very, very light showers, and they might not even pop up on the radar how light they are in nature. So tomorrow, the main thing that you should know is on and off cloud cover. You will see some sunshine at certain points of the day. You will see some cloudy skies and plenty of shade at some points of the day. It's not going to be a uniform forecast all throughout your Wednesday, but those peaks of sunshine are going to allow for a warm up back to around where we will sit today for your high temperatures, maybe even a little bit lower possibly, just depending on how widespread the cloud cover is, But then we go into Wednesday evening. Looks like some of the rain chances are trying to clear out. But once again, Wednesday night into Thursday morning, we see that cloud cover very widespread build in. And it does look like we are off to a pretty gloomy start on Thursday. There are not as many gaps in this cloud cover as what we do see on Wednesday morning. And then we go into the afternoon. There will be some breaks in this cloud cover, but I do have an emphasis on the word slightly, a slightly more impressive rain chance as we go into Thursday afternoon compared to Wednesday. I have a 20% chance of a light shower as compared to a 10% chance of a sprinkle. That just means that you might have a little bit of a better chance at catching some rain throughout Thursday, but in all likelihood, I would probably put more money on the fact that you probably can go throughout Wednesday and Thursday without seeing any rainfall whatsoever. It's not going to be very significant, but we are going to once again have peaks of sunshine. And take a look at this breeze. It just continues to come out of the south and the southwest. When you get winds from that direction, it's ushering in that warm and humid air that is present down in the northern Gulf, down in Florida, or off the Atlantic coast if the winds were coming in out of the southeast like they are today. So we are ushering in more moisture content into our atmosphere, which is a big reason why we're actually continuing to see these spotty showers. Remember what we were talking about yesterday, that convective process. When you have warmer temperatures that heat up the surface, they lead to a lifting of that warmer air at the surface. And if there's more moisture present at the surface, that moisture gets lifted up, they form cloud tops, and eventually they can lead to too much water being up there in the atmosphere. The clouds can't hold them anymore. That water condenses and starts to fall as precipitation. So it's kind of the same time, or the same process and the same thought process that we use when explaining those pop-up thunderstorms during the summertime, just on a lesser scale. Obviously, if the temperatures were 95 and we had dew point temperatures flirting with the 70s, then that would lead to a suitable environment for pop-up thunderstorms. Not necessarily just some pop-up sprinkles and some light showers, but that's kind of the same thought process that we do have with it, that convective process. And convective just means warm air rises, cool air sinks. As that warm air rises, that's obviously leading to the potential for those pop-up light showers and some sprinkles. So we go all the way throughout your Thursday, and actually looks like Future View just got updated on me. If you remember maybe last week when we were talking about this, Future View is going to update every other hour now, so we're going to get 12 new runs of Future View each and every day, as opposed to 4 new model runs, which we did see in the past. It is going to be good for maybe trying to pick apart all those model runs and compare them to one another throughout the day, especially as we get closer to a big time weather event. But obviously it can change things very drastically if, say, we're doing this in the middle of the stream and we had a line of thunderstorms and showers come in. So it could change the timing of things like that pretty drastically. But we'll continue to reiterate that, hey, this is a new model run. This is what we're just seeing as of right now. We haven't seen that as of recently. Obviously, the communication is key when it does come to your forecast. But as we go overnight Thursday into early Friday morning, guess what? Another round of these spotty showers. And it does look like maybe this is the best coverage of rain that we do see over the next 3 days. Overall, I think Friday we are going to finally start to see signs of some more impressive rain chances, which you will see in just a moment because we are going to have an incoming frontal boundary to break down as well. 72 for a high today, 73 tomorrow. Overall, I think your Wednesday afternoon should feel pretty similar to what we do have today, but we do get an extra bump up as we go into Thursday. Like I mentioned, that southerly wind component going to usher in a more humid air mass, a warmer air mass. So even despite the mostly cloudy atmosphere, we'll still have those peaks of sunshine that will also help contribute to warming, but the influx of a warmer and a more humid air mass, that is going to lead to some slightly warmer numbers on Thursday in the upper portion of the 70s, and more cloud cover overnight Wednesday into Thursday morning leads to a very pleasant environment to walk outside to, somewhere in the mid 50s early on Thursday morning. So 10% chance of a sprinkle tomorrow. And then we get into Thursday where we will have that 20% chance of a light shower. Overall, it's not going to accumulate to maybe anything besides about 1/10 of an inch of rain. Let's go ahead and play it all the way through where we do see some spotty green areas, but they really start to build in as we go into Thursday. Take a look at this. All your locations here on this graphic, not even popping up a singular 1/10 of an inch of rain. Like I said, it's going to really even struggle to record about a trace of rain if you do see anything over the course of this midweek, but there are some very light rain chances. So of course we want to make sure that we're continuing to make you known of that. And I don't really think it's going to even warrant grabbing the rain gear whatsoever. You know how I always say grab the rain gear to be better safe than sorry? I don't really think you're going to need the rain gear for this. Like I said, so light and so insignificant in nature. It's not really putting a damper on any plans. It's just going to provide you with a brief little shower. You might get a couple water droplets on your t-shirt and then that's that. So in terms of the wind gusts, we are actually going to have some breezy conditions built back in the forecast, but that's not looking to be today. It is actually looking to be tomorrow afternoon, where we will see some occasional gusts once again up to 20 to 25 miles per hour, kind of like what we saw yesterday morning in light of those breezy conditions. But then as we go into Thursday, it looks like we still continue to keep some slightly breezy conditions in the forecast, gusts up to 20 miles per hour possible. But then take a look up here in the top left of your screen. There's obviously some very dark red colors and even some shades of pink up there into states like Arkansas, getting up into Tennessee, Kentucky, and even up into Missouri. But you can start to see where these winds converge together, and that is going to be indicative of our next frontal boundary beginning to move in. But that frontal boundary isn't looking to, say, sweep through central Georgia in full force motion like it comes in at. It's actually going to kind of park itself once it does get here into the northern portion of the state of Georgia, and that's going to create a bit of an active weather forecast as we go into Friday and as we go into Saturday, where we will see some increasing rain chances. Well, I thought I'd turn this graphic off, giving you a bit of a prelude to what's coming tomorrow. The Mercer Bears will be taking on the Georgia State Panthers at Ortho Georgia Park. This forecast is obviously for this past weekend when the Mercer Bears took down Troy in a big mid-major series. That was definitely a big-time series win for Mercer. But nonetheless, we will edit this graphic accordingly for your forecast tomorrow. This is obviously the forecast from this past weekend. So my apologies, forgot to turn that graphic off. But hey, if you don't have any plans for your Wednesday evening, go ahead and mark that down on the calendar. The Mercer Bears will be at Ortho Georgia Park. I imagine first pitch sometime around 6 or 7 p.m. Now afternoon high temperatures, they just continue to go up until we get Friday into Saturday. There's finally some signs of seeing a slight cool down. Now some models are calling for the 80-degree mark as we go into Friday. I think it's really going to be all dependent on how much cloud cover we receive throughout the day. Once Future View gets all of Friday afternoon within its viewable range, then that's when we're actually going to have a better idea, or at least I'll have a more or a bit more confident idea about if we'll hit that 80-degree mark as we go into Friday. And we were talking about it yesterday. It actually will be the first time we've hit the 80-degree mark since maybe sometime in early January. Believe it or not, we actually hit 81 degrees for a high temperature one day in January. So it's something that we have seen as of recently. It's not too big of a deal. I know it is the middle of winter, but we've had our fair share of pretty warm days throughout this winter, even going back to Christmas Eve where I think it was 85 degrees or something like that. So obviously we've had our warm stretches, but we've also had our very cold stretches over the last couple of months. But there are signs of a cool down trying to ensue as we go Friday into Saturday. I know 79 and 76, those numbers are not all too different. It really happens more so as we go into Sunday. Morning lows just continue to go up. In fact, we're nearly 20 degrees above average as we start out Friday and Saturday mornings. Enjoy it while it lasts because we are going to get a bit of a reality check like I did just refer to. But going into your long range models, remember what we were talking about? I think the winds on Future View went out until around 6 a.m. on Friday. This one goes out into 10 a.m. on Friday where we actually see the rain chances associated with that clashing of the winds. So here comes the frontal boundary. Widespread rain being initialized by the European model in blue, the GFS model more so some patchy green areas, not resolving the rain chances quite as good, but it's beginning to come into the southeast and the state of Georgia specifically as early as Friday morning, okay? But we're not necessarily seeing anything in the form of changes to your forecast here in central Georgia until we get maybe into Friday afternoon and evening. So it does look like maybe some spotty shower chances, nothing that looks too definitive, but we also are seeing the GFS model in green here go a little bit ahead of, say, what the European model in blue is saying. So what this is showing me right now, the European model has this frontal boundary stopping a little bit farther to the north than the GFS, and it's going to begin to stall farther up to the north as we go into the later hours on Friday and into Saturday. Now, when you do get one of these boundaries stall out and kind of become stationary, well, when you pair it up with the warm temperatures and the humid air mass that we have, it kind of leads to a continuous axis of lift. So right now where you see this widespread blue shade going all the way down from southern Mississippi and southern Alabama through the northern portion of Georgia, upstate South Carolina, all the way to the Carolina coast, this is the stationary boundary. And it might kick into motion just a little bit, but it does look like the rain chances just continue to kind of pop up along that stalled boundary. That is as of Saturday morning. But that's also according to the European model. It looks like maybe as we go into Saturday morning, the GFS still has plenty of rain chances up to the north of us. So right now, the main messaging is the long-range models cannot agree on a set timing or a set location of these rain chances. But I would have more confidence in Friday into Saturday having better rain chances, say, than just those scattered sprinkles and spotty light showers I'm talking about for Wednesday and Thursday. So it does look like we are going to kick off the weekend with a bit of a rain chance. But then we go into Saturday evening right now, and this is where the GFS is hinting at a bit of an active weather forecast as we go into the nighttime hours on Saturday. I'm not really buying this because the timing is just not lining up, number one. However, this is what one model run does say. This is obviously why we don't go ahead and believing what one model run does say this far out. The European model is not on board with this whatsoever. It's just hinting at a couple rounds of showers. The GFS has the possibility of maybe some storms, and that's still mainly to the north of us. This is still in the Atlanta area up in Athens, and these are high resolution models, meaning that we can't necessarily nail down the specific location of impacts as we go into this far out in the future. We'll continue to keep you posted. Are there chances of storms as we go into this weekend, specifically on Saturday? Yes, there's a chance, but the National Weather Service continues to believe the same idea that I'm reiterating to you right now. There's really low confidence in the chance of that as of right now. If we had high confidence this far out, then we would be outlined in some sort of an SPC risk, even though it's 4 to 5 days out in the future. So it's something that you'll want to stay updated with over the course of the next couple of days. But I would just plan on maybe at least some scattered showers being present throughout your Friday and going into your Saturday before finally into Sunday morning. Whatever system is lingering, stalled boundary whatsoever, that finally kicks back into gear and gets out of the forecast. And that sets up a dry stretch of weather for the end of your weekend on Sunday and into Monday and into next Tuesday, maybe even all the way into your next Wednesday. So in terms of how much rainfall we're forecasting, these do look like some pretty beneficial totals, and this is according to the GFS, the green model that you just saw, which is hinting more so at the possibility of some storms. But overall, some of these rainfall totals, not terribly impressive to me. We saw more rainfall this past weekend with all the rain that we did receive in the form of some of those storms. So this makes me think that maybe we're not necessarily seeing anything in the way of significant rain. However, we are possibly seeing maybe some totals up to about an inch. The European model thinking more so about a half an inch. So this is just a rough estimate right now. I would say maybe our rainfall totals over the course of this weekend going to range from about a half inch to an inch. Very rough estimate. That will need some fine tuning. Just wanted to give you kind of an idea about what's going to be in store. So your rain chances got an increase, but I'm still holding on to about a 30% chance of rain because I'm very, very uncertain about what certain time of the day as we go into the weekend these rain chances are going to pop up. Is it going to be Friday evening? Is it going to be Friday overnight into Saturday morning? Is it going to be Saturday evening? Right now, it's anyone's best guess, so we are going to continue to fine-tune this forecast. We need to see some better model agreement first and foremost, but one thing is for certain. After the front does pass through, it kicks back into gear from its stalled boundary, then it will pass through, and it is ushering in a cooler air mass. Like I said, all good things must come to an end. Highs on Sunday, still not too bad, somewhere in the low 60s, right there around average where we should be this time of year. But then they drop down a little bit farther as we go into Monday. A high temperature of 54 degrees, and your morning low temperature does look to return back below freezing temperature. So yes, we are getting a very rude awakening, and Mother Nature is still reminding us that, hey, we're not out of the month of February yet. It is still winter. You can still see cool downs like this. In fact, we can still see cool downs like this as we go into the month of March. But it is something to go ahead and prepare yourself after it has been a stretch of maybe even some t-shirt and shorts weather. I know that's what I was outside walking in yesterday. But increasing rain chances, the most confidence in rain chances will occur sometime on Friday into Saturday. However, compared to Wednesday and Thursday, those rain chances are a whole lot better, but we will continue to see that warm up until the front finally kicks into gear and passes through, and then that will result in some colder temperatures as we go into the beginning of next week. And right now, what I'm seeing with some of the long-range models, this does look to be a pretty short-lived cold snap. We're not talking about a period or a stretch of 7 days in a row that could be below average. I think we'll return into the 60s and eventually the low 70s as we go into the end of next week and we officially wrap up the month of February, which I can't believe I'm saying already. But speaking of looking ahead, we have to go all the way into March because there will be a couple of things happening. First and foremost, the time change. That's going to happen in a little less than 3 weeks. So go ahead and mentally prepare yourself. We are getting ready to reset the clocks once again. We're springing forward, which means you're going to lose an hour of sleep that Saturday night into that Sunday morning. I believe it's March 7th into the 8th. However, we are going to get a much later sunset. So the sunrise is going to get a little bit later. So you're probably going to be heading out to work, heading out to school, and it's still going to be dark outside. However, as you are making that evening commute home from work, it's going to be a whole lot brighter outside, and the sun is not going to set until sometime past 7:30. I believe the sunset on that Sunday evening, March 8th, is going to be sometime around 7:37 p.m. So that's something I'm personally excited for, and that is a sign of some warmer days ahead because when you have longer hours of daylight, it's more reminiscent of a springtime day and getting into a summertime day where eventually that sunset, we'll be talking about it being pretty close to 9 p.m. St. Patrick's Day going to be roughly about 9 days after that. That's going to be, of course, on the 17th of March. St. Patrick's Day is falling on a Tuesday, so make your plans for the festivities the weekend before or maybe even the weekend after. It's kind of a middle ground holiday, so you can celebrate it for 2 consecutive weekends if you want. Then the first day of spring, 3 days after St. Patrick's Day on the 20th of March, 31 days, exactly a month away from the first day of spring. Very, very eager for that. And then, of course, after that, we cross over into April. And the first Sunday of April, April 5th, I do believe to be exact, is going to be Easter Sunday, so 47 days away from that. There's a whole lot going on over the next couple of months, and just looking at all the colors that I built on this graphic, I was telling Ansley Parker earlier today, it's just full of beautiful colors. It's an exciting time of year as we get into the spring season, but of course, as we do get into the spring season, eventually we're going to have to break out the pollen monitor once again, which I'm sure not a lot of you want to hear about, but hey, we will be kind of tuning in and keeping you updated with all the pollen counts with that allergy forecast each and every day for your extended forecast coming up over the next couple of months. But right now, still not anything to worry